The Interstellar Defense Academy occupied the entire upper hemisphere of Station Prometheus 7, which was either a testament to the galaxy's commitment to military education or proof that bureaucrats everywhere suffered from the same delusions of grandeur. The station hung in the neutral zone between 6 major stellar nations, spinning peacefully in the void, while inside its halls, the future warriors of 100 species learned the fine art of not accidentally starting wars while looking impressive doing it. Officer Vex Hartley had been assigned to this floating monument to interspecies cooperation for 3 standard cycles now, which was approximately 2 cycles and 11 months longer than she found tolerable. Her official title was Human Liaison and Cultural Attaché, which translated roughly to professional stand around and be ignored while aliens do important things. The pay was decent, the view was spectacular, and the irony was so thick you could serve it at the commissary. The thing about the academy was that it ran on a very simple principle. Power could be measured, categorized, and ranked. Every species had their gifted individuals, their prodigies, their specimens of supernatural capability. The Valorians had their gravity manipulators. The Krathak possessed crystalline bodies that could reshape matter. The Thessian collective produced telepaths who could coordinate fleet movements across light years. Each species brought their best and brightest. And the Academy had developed a universal scanning system that could measure an individual's combat potential on a scale from 1 to 10,000. It was all very scientific, very precise, very orderly. Vex found it absolutely hilarious. She stood now in Observation Base 7, watching through reinforced transparent aluminum as the annual combat potential assessment proceeded in the chamber below. Her uniform was standard issue gray, her posture was regulation perfect, and her expression was carefully neutral. She had mastered the art of looking like she belonged while simultaneously broadcasting that she was utterly irrelevant to current proceedings. It was a skill she had honed to perfection. The assessment chamber itself was an impressive piece of technology. A circular platform 20 meters in diameter, surrounded by sensor arrays that looked like they had been designed by someone who thought complexity and competence were the same thing. Holographic displays floated around the space, showing real-time readouts of biometric data, energy signatures, and the all-important power level that everyone cared about. Currently standing in the center of the chamber was Cadet Liss Venora, a Thessian whose lavender skin seemed to glow slightly under the harsh scanning lights. Her forearms were held in the traditional meditation pose of her people, and the scanner was humming away, doing whatever scanners did when they wanted to look busy. "Cadet Venora," announced Instructor Grath, a massive Krathak whose crystalline body refracted the light into small rainbows. Power level 6,215. Classification, Advanced Psionic Warfare Specialist. Recommendation, Command Track. Polite applause rippled through the observation galleries. 6,000 was impressive, certainly above average for a third-cycle cadet. Venora bowed in all 4 cardinal directions and stepped off the platform, looking appropriately humble while her face betrayed her satisfaction. Vex made a mental note. 6,215. That meant Venora could probably coordinate a tactical strike team across a battlefield, share sensory data between squad members, and possibly detect hostile intent before it manifested as action. Useful skills. The kind that kept people alive in the kind of situations where keeping people alive became suddenly very difficult. The assessments continued. Cadet Jorax, a hulking Dravine with 6 eyes and arms like industrial equipment, registered at 5,900. Strong, durable, capable of operating in environments that would crush most species flat. Cadet Miss Reen, A Valorian with feathers that shifted through blue and green patterns, came in at 7,300, her gravity manipulation abilities ranking in the exceptional range. Each time, the scanner hummed. Each time, numbers appeared. Each time, everyone nodded sagely and pretended this told them everything they needed to know about a person. Vex had been scanned exactly once, on her first day at the academy. She had registered at 47, not 4,700, 47. On a scale where 10,000 was theoretically possible, and most combat-capable individuals scored above 3,000. The look on the technician's face had been priceless. "Must be a malfunction," he had said, running the scan 3 more times. 47, 46, 49. The scanner had been very confident about Vex's complete and utter unremarkability, which was precisely why she was perfect for her current assignment, even if most of the Academy's administration had no idea what that assignment actually entailed. "Next candidate," Grath announced, his voice reverberating through the chamber with crystalline harmonics. "Ensign Kale Theron." Now this was going to be interesting. Kale Theron walked onto the platform with the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of being told he was exceptional. He was Valorian, like Miss Reen. But where her coloring was sea tones, his feathers were deep crimson and gold. His people were descended from avian predators on a high-gravity world, and it showed in every movement. Grace, power, precision. At 2 meters tall with a wingspan that would span 4 when fully extended, he cut an impressive figure. He was also, according to every instructor in the academy, the most naturally gifted cadet to enter the program in 2 decades. The whispers in the observation galleries confirmed it. Cadets leaned forward. Even the instructors, who prided themselves on their professional detachment, showed interest. Kyle's preliminary assessments had been extraordinary. His gravity manipulation was reportedly so fine-tuned he could alter the mass of individual atoms. There were rumors he might break 8,000. Some wild speculation suggested he could approach 9. 9,000 was the stuff of legends. Command-level officers rarely broke 8. 9,000 meant you were a strategic asset, the kind of individual who got assigned to special operations and whose location was classified for security reasons. Vex watched Kyle take his position in the center of the platform. He looked calm, focused. His wings were folded tight against his back, his posture perfect. He had every reason to be confident. The scanner powered up with a low thrum that Vex could feel through the observation bay's flooring. The sensor arrays began their dance, tracking and measuring and analyzing. Holographic displays bloomed around Kale, showing energy patterns that looked like abstract art designed by a mathematician having a fever dream. For the first 30 seconds, everything proceeded normally. The readings climbed steadily. 5,000, 6,000, 6,500. The crowd murmured appreciation. 7,000, 7,200. Then something changed. Vex noticed it before anyone else, because she was watching the technicians, not the displays. One of them, a nervous Thessian named Prell, frowned at his console. His fingers moved quickly across the interface, pulling up secondary readouts. His frown deepened. The scanner's hum changed pitch. Not dramatically. Just a slight shift, the kind of thing you might miss if you were not paying attention. But Vex had been trained to pay attention to the things that seemed insignificant right up until they killed you. 7,800, Grath announced, unable to keep a note of excitement from his crystalline voice. Approaching projected threshold. The scanner screamed, not beeped, not alarmed, screamed. A sound like metal tearing itself apart, like reality deciding it had had enough of this nonsense and filing for divorce. Every display in the chamber went from calm blues and greens to violent, angry red. The holographic projections shattered into static. And in the center of it all, Cale's eyes went wide with confusion and the beginning of fear. "Unknown level," the system announced in a flat, artificial voice that somehow managed to sound panicked. "Error, unable to quantify. Error, power source unrecognized. Error, error, error." The sensor arrays began to spark. Small at first, little fireworks of failing technology. Then bigger, much bigger. "Shut it down," Instructor Grath bellowed, his usually calm demeanor evaporating. "Emergency shutdown, now." Prell was already trying, his 4 hands flying across multiple interfaces simultaneously. "It's not responding. The system's locked in analysis mode. It's trying to categorize something it doesn't recognize. The main power coupling exploded. It was not a large explosion by military standards. No one would write epic poems about it. But in the confines of the assessment chamber, with Cale standing directly beneath the overloading equipment, it was more than sufficient to constitute a very serious problem. The blast wave hit Cale like a physical thing, lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward. His wings snapped open reflexively, catching air, but the chamber's artificial gravity was fluctuating wildly from the power surge. One moment he was airborne, the next he was dropping like a stone toward the platform's edge, toward a 15-meter fall to the lower equipment bays, where very hard, very unforgiving machinery waited to make his landing extremely unpleasant. In the observation galleries, every alien in attendance sat frozen. Not from cowardice or indifference, but from simple biological reality. What was happening fast. Their enhanced senses were processing the crisis, running combat algorithms, calculating response times and trajectories. In another 2.3 seconds, several of them would have moved. In 3 seconds, someone would have attempted a rescue. They had time, plenty of time, really, by their species standards. They also had time to watch Vex move. One moment she was standing at the back of Observation Base 7, 30 meters from the chamber entrance, on a different level of the station entirely. The next moment, she was simply not there. The moment after that, she was on the chamber floor. No one saw her move. Not really. What they saw was a blur, a suggestion of motion, the way you might see lightning, and only afterwards process that, yes, something happened there. Several cadets would later swear they heard a sound like displaced air, a thunderclap in miniature. Vex caught Cale 3 meters from impact. One hand, casually, like someone catching a dropped data pad. Her other hand came up in a motion too fast to properly track, and a piece of the exploding sensor array that had been tumbling directly toward Cale's head simply stopped midair, then dropped harmlessly to the side. She set Cale on his feet with the gentle precision of someone placing a fragile package exactly where it needed to be. His wings were still spread, his body still processing the adrenaline dump of near death. He stared at her with wide, uncomprehending eyes. Vex brushed some dust off his shoulder, her expression never changing from its default state of mild professional disinterest. "You're welcome," she said. The silence in the chamber was the kind of profound quiet that usually required either deep space or the moment after someone said something catastrophically inappropriate at a formal dinner. Every eye was on Vex. Every enhanced sense, every combat-trained instinct, every finely tuned perception was focused on the human who had just moved faster than their collective ability to perceive motion. The scanner, still sparking and smoking, chose that moment to emit one final message before dying entirely. Warning: unable to scan. Unknown entity. Level classification impossible. Vex looked up at the failing equipment, then at the technicians, then at Instructor Grath, who had finally made it to the chamber floor, his crystalline body reflecting emergency lighting in unsettling patterns. "Huh," she said. "That's inconvenient." Kyle found his voice first, which was impressive considering his brain was still trying to reconcile what his eyes had just witnessed with what his understanding of physics suggested was possible. "How did you moved?" "Yes," Vex agreed. "Those are all accurate observations." "But the scan," Prell stammered from his console, all four of his hands hanging uselessly in the air. "You registered 47. 47. That's baseline. That's civilian-level classification. You shouldn't be able to. That speed is impossible for—" "Is it?" Vex asked. And there was something in her tone now, something that had not been there before. Not threatening, exactly. More like a door being opened slightly, letting people glimpse something they had not known was there. "Or is your scanner maybe not as comprehensive as you thought?" More Academy personnel were arriving now, drawn by the explosion and the emergency alerts. Several instructors, a medical team, and, inevitably, Administrator Vex thought with an internal sigh. Director Ashton Krill himself, the Krethak who oversaw all Academy operations and took his responsibilities with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for funeral directors and tax auditors. Krill's crystalline form seemed to darken as he assessed the situation, which in Krethak emotional language meant he was somewhere between deeply concerned and absolutely furious. "Someone explain," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested he was very much not in the mood for creativity in the explanation department. Grath gestured at the destroyed scanner. The assessment was proceeding normally with Ensign Theron. The system experienced a catastrophic failure. The readings indicated an unknown power source in the chamber. But Ensign Theron was the only subject being scanned. He stopped, his multiple eyes shifting to Vex. Officer Hartley moved with velocities that exceed our sensor tracking capabilities. She crossed 30 meters and descended 2 levels in less than 1.2 seconds. 1.07. Prell corrected quietly, staring at his console like it had personally betrayed him. "I have the timestamp recordings." She covered 33.6 meters in 1.07 seconds. He did some quick calculations. That's approximately 31 meters per second, while changing elevation. And then she caught a Valorian male in freefall without visible strain. Director Krill turned to face Vex fully. His body language was unreadable to most species, but Vex had spent 3 cycles learning Krethak micro-expressions. He was confused, suspicious, and, interestingly, not entirely surprised. "Officer Hartley," he said carefully, "your assessment registered you at power level 47. You were classified as non-combatant, suitable for liaison work only. Would you care to explain this discrepancy?" Vex considered her options. She could continue playing the role she had been playing for 3 cycles. She could deflect, obfuscate, file a report that would take weeks to process. She could invoke about 15 different protocols that would classify this conversation above Director Krill's security clearance. Or she could take advantage of the fact that a room full of the galaxy's supposedly superior specimens had just watched a human do something their technology insisted was impossible. Sometimes the best move was the honest one. "Your scanner didn't malfunction," she said. "Well, it did, but not the way you think. It tried to scan me." "You were not on the platform," Grath objected. "Didn't need to be. I was in the room. Your sensor arrays are designed to detect and measure energy signatures, right? They blanket the entire chamber to make sure they're getting accurate readings. Problem is, they're calibrated for species that broadcast their power levels. Valorians, Krethak, Thessians. You all leak energy constantly, It's part of how your abilities work. You project, you radiate, you announce your presence. She gestured at Kale, who was still standing very still, his wings half spread in what might have been either defensive posture or simply shock. When your scanner tried to baseline the ambient energy in the room before measuring Kale, it detected something it didn't recognize, something that doesn't fit your scale. So it did what any good piece of technology does when confused. It tried harder. It amped up the sensitivity, tried to quantify what it was detecting. And when it still couldn't classify the signature, it panicked. "Are you suggesting," Director Krill said slowly, "that you were projecting enough energy to confuse a scanner designed to measure up to 10,000 units of combat potential?" "No," Vex said. "I'm suggesting I was actively suppressing energy that would have broken your scanner if I wasn't suppressing it. What leaked through anyway was enough to crash your system." The silence that followed this statement had a different quality than before. Before, it had been shock. Now it was the kind of quiet that came when people were frantically recalibrating their entire understanding of a situation. "That's impossible," Prell said. But he said it without conviction, like a man arguing that the sky could not possibly be falling while rubble accumulated around his feet. "Is it?" Vex asked again. "Tell me something. When you scan a Valorian, what are you measuring?" "Gravitational field manipulation. Capacity," Grath answered automatically. "The ability to alter local space-time curvature at quantum and macro scales." "And Thessians?" "Psionic resonance, neural pathway quantum entanglement, telepathic bandwidth." "Right. And Krithak?" "Molecular bonding strength, matter restructuring capability, crystalline lattice energy storage." "Exactly," Vex said. "You're measuring what they do, the output, the effect. You've built a whole system around quantifying how alien species project power outward." She paused, making sure everyone was following. "Humans don't project. We contain." Kyle had been listening silently, but now he spoke up, his voice steadier. "What does that mean?" Vex turned to him, and her expression softened slightly. He had almost died after all, and he deserved an actual explanation rather than cryptic comments. "Your species evolved on a high-gravity world where the ability to manipulate gravitational fields provided survival advantage. You needed to project that power to affect your environment. Thessians developed telepathy because communication across distances helped survival in their ecosystem. Krithak evolved on a world where being able to reshape your own body on the fly meant you could adapt to different environmental conditions." She gestured around the chamber. "Every species in this academy evolved in environments where displaying power was advantageous. Warning off predators, attracting mates, establishing dominance hierarchies. You all broadcast because broadcasting helped you survive." "And humans?" Director Krill asked. "Humans evolved on a death world where almost everything was bigger, faster, stronger, and more poisonous than we were. We were persistence hunters. We didn't chase prey by being faster. We chased them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We didn't fight predators by being stronger. We outlasted them, outthought them, and hunted them to extinction when they posed a threat. Earth didn't reward the organisms that advertised their capabilities. Earth rewarded the organisms that hid everything until the exact moment they needed it." She held up one hand, examining it like she was seeing it for the first time. "You want to know what your scanner was detecting? Chemical energy storage in muscle cells that's orders of magnitude more efficient than your models predict. A skeletal structure that can handle impact forces that should shatter bone. Neural processing that operates partially on quantum principles your neuroscience hasn't documented because you assumed biology couldn't access quantum states. A cardiovascular system that can redistribute resources so fast it looks like magic. And that's just the baseline human body. 47. Prell whispered, still staring at his console. You tested at 47. Because I was suppressing everything, Vex said. Your scanner measures energy projection. I was projecting the approximate energy level of someone sitting very still and thinking about lunch. Which I was. The lunch here is terrible, by the way. Who decided that nutrient paste needed to be that particular shade of gray? Despite everything, several cadets made sounds that might have been suppressed laughter. Director Krill was not laughing. His body had taken on the deep amber coloration that meant he was thinking very hard about something he found troubling. Officer Hartley, I need to understand something. Are you saying that Earth Command has been sending us liaisons who are... He paused, searching for the right word. Wildly more capable than your assessment systems can measure? Yes. And they didn't think to mention this? Well, Vex said, and now there was definitely amusement in her voice. Would you have believed them if they told you? You've spent 3 cycles treating me like I'm decorative furniture that files reports. If Earth Command had said, by the way, our liaison could probably fight off a boarding party single-handedly, would you have taken that seriously? Or would you have filed it under amusing human exaggeration and moved on? The look on Krill's crystalline face suggested he knew exactly where he would have filed that. Besides, Vex continued, it wasn't relevant until today. My job was to observe, report, and provide cultural context. I've been doing that. The fact that I'm also here as a safety measure in case something catastrophically bad happened, well, that was need-to-know information. And we needed to know, Grath said. Did you? Vex asked. Before today, what would have changed if you knew? Would you have trained your cadets differently? Would you have altered your curriculum? Or would you have just been uncomfortable around the human who might be dangerous, spent a lot of time trying to measure something you don't have the tools to measure, and generally made everyone's lives more complicated? She had a point, and from the way several instructors shifted uncomfortably, they knew it. Kyle, who had been processing all of this while standing very still, finally spoke again. Thank you, he said quietly, for catching me. That would have been very bad. Probably fatal, Vex agreed. You're welcome. Try not to make it a habit. Can I ask? Kale hesitated. What would you have scored? If the scanner could measure you properly? Vex considered the question. Honestly, I don't know. Your scale measures specific things, and I don't do most of those things. I can't manipulate gravity like you can. I can't reshape matter like Director Krill. I can't do telepathy, telekinesis, energy projection, or any of the flashy abilities your system is designed to quantify. But you're fast, Kale said. Incredibly fast, and strong. You caught me with one hand. Fast and strong, yes. Also durable, adaptable, capable of functioning in environments that would kill most species here. I heal quickly. I can survive on minimal resources. I can go without sleep for extended periods, if necessary. I can track targets across varied terrain using minimal sensory input. I'm very good at violence when violence becomes necessary. She said this last part matter-of-factly, like discussing a proficiency in accounting. But most importantly, I'm very good at looking like I'm not good at any of those things until I need to be. A perfect infiltrator, Grath said, and there was respect in his voice now. A survivor, Vex corrected. My species spent 300,000 years getting very good at not dying on a planet that was trying very hard to kill us. We're the result of that process. Every human is. Every human? Director Krill asked, and now there was alarm in his voice. You're saying every member of your species has this level of capability? More or less. I mean, there's variation. Some humans are more specialized in certain directions. But baseline human capability is significantly higher than your assessment tools can measure. Yes. We're from a Class 12 death world, Director. Everything on Earth is built to survive in an environment your safety protocols would classify as a continuous disaster zone. The gravity, the atmospheric pressure, the microbial life, the megafauna, the weather patterns. Earth is actively hostile to life, and humans are the apex predator of that environment. She let that sink in for a moment. So when you scan a human and get a reading of 47, what you're measuring is how much we're allowing to leak through our control. It's like, imagine if all your species walked around with their abilities at full power all the time. Valorians altering gravity constantly, Thessians broadcasting thoughts continuously, Krythax shifting form every second. You'd all exhaust yourselves, right? You'd burn through energy reserves. You'd be inefficient. We learn control, Grath said. It's part of basic training. Exactly. Now imagine if that control was built into your species at the genetic level. Imagine if millions of years of evolution had hardwired you to operate at maximum efficiency by default, only accessing full capability when survival demanded it. That's humans. We don't have an on switch for our abilities because we're always on. We just have a very good don't advertise it setting. Kaizo was looking at her with an expression that was part awe, part concern, and part something else entirely. Why are humans here at the Academy? If you're all... He gestured vaguely. Because Earth Command believes in playing nice with the galactic community, Vex said. Because cooperation is more valuable than domination. Because despite being very good at violence, humans generally prefer not to be violent if we can avoid it. We spend enough time being violent to each other back on Earth. We learned that lesson. Also, frankly, because we have a lot to learn from other species. Just because we're durable doesn't mean we're superior. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas. Your mathematics, your quantum physics, your faster-than-light theories. We need that knowledge. And in exchange, you send us liaisons. Director Krill said slowly, understanding dawning. Who can protect this station if something goes catastrophically wrong? Among other things, yes. How many? Grath asked. How many humans are stationed throughout the galaxy in similar positions? That would be classified information, Vex said pleasantly. But if you're worried that Earth Command has secretly placed dangerous operatives in every major galactic installation, well, I can neither confirm nor deny that this is a reasonable thing to worry about. The look that passed between Krill and Grath suggested they were having a silent conversation about security protocols and threat assessments. But we're not dangerous to you, Vex added, her tone becoming serious. That's the point. We're here because Earth Command wants humanity to be part of the galactic community, not conquerors of it. Yes, we're capable. Yes, we're probably more capable than your assessment systems can properly evaluate. But we're also genuinely interested in cooperation. I've spent 3 cycles here doing actual liaison work, not just pretending. I've filed hundreds of reports. I've helped resolve dozens of cultural misunderstandings. I've done my job. And today? Kyle asked. Today, I did a different part of my job. The part where I make sure promising young officers don't die from equipment malfunctions. She smiled at him, a real smile, not the professional one she usually wore. "You're going to be a good officer, Kale. You have good instincts, you think before you act, and you actually listen when people talk. Those are rare qualities. It would have been a waste if you'd gotten a concussion or broken bones because a scanner got confused." Kale nodded slowly, still processing. Then, surprising everyone, including possibly himself, he executed a perfect Valorian bow, wings spread in a gesture of profound respect. "I owe you my life, Officer Hartley. That debt is not forgotten." "You don't owe me anything," Vex said, but she nodded back respectfully. "But if you really want to repay me, maybe use this experience. You all—" She looked around at the gathered cadets, the ones who had been watching from the galleries and had now crowded into the chamber. "You've been trained to assess threats based on measurable power levels. But power isn't always loud. Strength isn't always visible. The universe is full of things that don't fit neatly into classification systems." She gestured at the destroyed scanner. "This machine tried to put me in a box labeled combat potential, and couldn't do it because I don't fit the assumptions it was built on. Don't be like this machine. Don't assume that just because you can't measure something, it isn't there. Some of the most dangerous things in the universe are the things that have learned not to advertise how dangerous they are." There was a long moment of silence as everyone absorbed this. Finally, Director Krill's crystalline body cycled through several colors before settling on a pale blue that indicated resignation mixed with grim amusement. "I'm going to have to file a report about this incident." "Yes," Vex agreed. "Earth Command is going to have to issue a formal statement about human capabilities." "Probably. Every human liaison in the galaxy is going to have their security clearance reviewed." "Almost certainly. And I'm going to have to completely redesign our assessment protocols." "That would be wise." Krill made a sound like wind chimes being strangled. "This is going to be an enormous amount of paperwork." "Welcome to my world," Vex said. "I've been filing reports about your assessment inadequacies for 3 cycles. No one reads them. I'm going to read them now. They're very thorough. Also, I used some fairly creative language in Report 16 when I was particularly annoyed about the nutrient paste." Despite everything, Krill's body flickered with patterns that indicated humor. "Officer Hartley, I think perhaps we should have a longer conversation about your actual role here at the Academy." "I think that would be productive," Vex agreed. "But maybe tomorrow. It's been a long day, and I think everyone could use some time to process. Also, the medical team probably wants to check on Kale." As if summoned by her words, the medical personnel who had been hanging back uncertainly rushed forward to examine Kale, who protested that he was fine while allowing them to scan him anyway. The other cadets began talking among themselves in hushed, excited voices. The instructors clustered together, no doubt planning emergency meetings about curriculum revisions and security protocols. Vex used the distraction to quietly slip toward the chamber exit. "Officer Hartley," Kale called after her. She turned back. He was surrounded by medical personnel, but was looking at her with an expression of intense curiosity. "One question. The scanner said, 'Level unknown.' If you had to guess, what would your actual level be? On our scale?" Vex considered this. She thought about the years of training, the genetic modifications that every Earth military volunteer received, the enhancements that built on already formidable baseline human capabilities. She thought about what she could actually do if she stopped holding back, if she operated at full capacity the way she had been trained to operate in actual combat situations. She thought about the fact that she was considered only moderately above average by Earth command standards, "I honestly don't know," she said finally. "But I'm pretty sure it would break your scale." She paused. "Actually, I'm pretty sure it would break your scanner. Again, maybe don't try to scan me. It seems to make machines unhappy." And with that, she left. Behind her, the academy descended into barely controlled chaos as personnel tried to simultaneously repair equipment, calm cadets, file reports, and fundamentally reassess their understanding of the human species. In observation galleries and training halls across the station, conversations erupted about humans, death worlders, and the apparently catastrophic inadequacy of the Universal Combat Assessment System. Vex made it back to her quarters, locked the door, and allowed herself a small smile. 3 cycles. 3 cycles of being treated as irrelevant, of watching aliens assume humans were soft because they measured quiet. 3 cycles of filing reports that no one read, of suggestions that no one implemented, of warnings that no one heeded. And now, because a scanner had thrown what amounted to an electronic tantrum, the entire academy was going to have to confront the fact that maybe, just maybe, the quiet species from the Class 12 death world was worth paying attention to. She pulled up her personal communication terminal and began composing a message to Earth Command. They were going to want a full debrief about today's incident. They were also, she suspected, going to find this entire situation absolutely hilarious. The message began, "To Earth Command, RE, Assessment Protocol Failure Incident. Summary. Remember how you said the Academy needed to learn to properly evaluate human capabilities? Problem solved. They're learning, rapidly, with considerable alarm. Please send guidance on how much information I should provide in follow-up discussions. Also, we need to discuss updating our liaison training protocols. Current approach of let them assume we're harmless until they discover otherwise has proven effective, but may not scale well now that one station knows the truth. P.S. The nutrient paste here is still terrible. Can we address this? Over." She sent the message, changed into comfortable clothes, and settled in to wait for the inevitable summons for debriefings, meetings, and probably several very awkward conversations with Director Krill. Outside her window, Station Prometheus 7 continued its eternal spin through the void. Home to 1,000 cadets from 100 worlds, all learning to become defenders of civilization, keepers of peace, warriors against the dark. And now they were learning something else. That sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was the one you had spent 3 years ignoring because she scored 47 on a test designed to measure things she had never bothered to display. The scanner had screamed, "Level unknown," because it encountered something it could not classify, could not quantify, could not fit into its carefully constructed scale of power. It had done exactly what it was designed to do. Warn everyone that there was something in the room that broke their understanding of how the universe worked. They had just made the very understandable mistake of thinking the warning was about the wrong person. Vex pulled up a report on her terminal, one of the 16 she had filed over the past 3 cycles. The one where she had tried to explain that measuring power projection was not the same as measuring capability. No one had read it then. She suspected people would read it now. The galaxy was full of species that broadcast their strength, that displayed their power, that announced their capabilities to anyone watching. They had built entire civilizations around the concept that might should be measurable, visible, categorizable. Humans had built their civilization around the opposite idea, that the most dangerous predator was the one you never saw coming until it was too late. Both approaches had their merits. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when those two philosophies tried to reconcile. And somewhere in a medical bay, a Valorian cadet named Kael Theron was learning that sometimes the person who saved your life was someone you had walked past every day without noticing. Someone who looked unremarkable because she worked very hard to look unremarkable. Someone who moved like physics was a suggestion rather than a law, because she came from a world where physics was significantly more aggressive than standard models predicted. The scanner had tried to measure her and failed. The Academy had tried to classify her and failed. But she had succeeded at the only thing that actually mattered. She had kept someone alive who deserved to live. Everything else was just numbers on a screen that had never meant what everyone thought they meant anyway. And really, Vex thought as she settled in for what was definitely going to be a very interesting next few cycles. That was the most human thing possible. Not the speed, not the strength, not the durability or the combat capability or any of the measurable qualities. The most human thing was deciding that all those capabilities were less important than using them at the exact right moment to keep one person from falling. The scanner could scream, "Level unknown," all it wanted. Humans already knew what level they operated at. Whatever level was necessary. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that actually meant.